My name is Michael Carter, and for years I believed that family was everything. I took pride in being a dedicated father, a supportive husband, and a man who always put his children first. Our life in suburban Atlanta was as ordinary as it was secure. A steady job as a project manager, a cozy home, weekend barbecues, and school runs, all under the gentle routine of a normal American life. I never imagined that one revelation could shatter all that trust. IT began on a late afternoon when I was home with our two kids. Jessica, my wife of 10 years, had told me she was at the gym to relieve some stress. I supported her need to unwind, especially after long days at work. While I stayed back to look after our children, I went about my day quietly, playing with them, helping with homework, and managing the small tasks around the house. In my solitude, I found comfort in the idea that I was a rock that held our family together. However, that comfort was shattered when I found an item that didn't belong. I was tidying up the living room while the kids played when I noticed a neatly folded towel and a gym towel that wasn't mine lying on the coffee table. It was fresh and carried a scent I didn't recognize, something musky and expensive. I remembered that Jessica had recently mentioned her trainer at the gym. Someone named Trevor was very supportive. At first, I brushed it off as harmless. Maybe it was just left over from her workout routine. But as the days passed, small discrepancies began to pile up. Jessica started coming home later than usual, and her excuses became more vague. Every time I casually inquired about her time at the gym, she dismissed my concerns with a nervous smile and a vague explanation about a stressful day. I tried to convince myself that I was overthinking, that a few extra hours or an unfamiliar towel might not mean much in the context of a busy life. Yet, the seed of doubt had been planted. One evening, while the kids were asleep and I was preparing dinner, I noticed a text notification on her phone, a message from Trevor. I hesitated, knowing I shouldn't pry, but a gnawing suspicion forced my hand. I glanced at the message and saw it read, "Can't wait to see you later. I know you needed this." The tone was intimate, far from the casual chatter of a trainer discussing workout tips. My stomach churned. The message was time-stamped for the early evening, a time when Jessica should have been at the gym, not at home that night. As I lay awake in the darkness of our bedroom, my mind reeled with questions. I replayed every conversation, every glance, every excuse. Jessica had always said that the gym was her sanctuary, a place where she could vent and relieve stress. But now, I was convinced that something more was at play. The thought that my wife might be involved with someone else while I was left alone with the children was too painful to ignore. I began to compile a mental timeline of events. The extra gym hours, the vague texts, the unfamiliar scent of expensive cologne lingering on the towel. Each piece of evidence formed a damning picture of betrayal. My heart felt heavy with sorrow and burning with anger. I felt deceived, not only as a husband but as a father. The idea that while I devoted myself to caring for our children, Jessica had been seeking solace, and perhaps something far more intimate, in someone else's arms, was a wound I could not easily mend. As the first light of dawn crept through our bedroom window, I made a silent promise to myself. I would uncover every hidden detail, every secret rendezvous that Jessica had with Trevor. I would gather the evidence I needed, and when the time was right, I would confront her. The thought of this betrayal ignited something deep inside me, a dangerous resolve. I wasn't going to be the passive victim of a lie. I would reclaim my dignity, no matter the cost. That morning, with my mind a whirlwind of doubts and painful clarity, I decided that the next step was to follow the trail of clues. I would discreetly check her phone records, track her whereabouts, and even ask subtle questions when the kids were at school. I promised myself that I would not let this betrayal go unanswered. My heart ached with the knowledge of her deception, but it also fueled a determination that would soon push me down a path of retribution, a path that would force me to confront not only my wife's treachery, but also the man who had exploited her stress for his own gains. I lay in bed that night, haunted by the reality that my family had been built on lies. And as sleep finally overtook me, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The image of that gym towel, imbued with the scent of a stranger, would be etched in my mind as the first sign of a betrayal that would change my life forever. The days that followed were a blur of quiet suspicion and mounting determination. Jessica continued to go to the gym, claiming it was her way to handle a stressful workload, yet I began noticing subtle changes. She'd return home with a certain nonchalance, a half smile that didn't reach her eyes, a fleeting glance toward her phone that hinted at secrets she'd rather not share. I found myself increasingly fixated on every detail of her routine, each irregularity fueling the fire of betrayal that burned inside me. Late one afternoon, while the kids were at their after-school activities, I managed to catch a glimpse of Jessica's phone screen. It was left momentarily unlocked on the kitchen counter. In a moment of weakness, driven by both hurt and the desperate need for answers, I scrolled through the recent messages. There they were, text exchanges with Trevor that were far too personal. "Miss you tonight," one message read, followed by another that said, "I know you needed to unwind. See you later." The warmth in those words was in stark contrast to the cold void of betrayal I now felt. The evidence was undeniable. My wife wasn't just relieving stress at the gym. She was indulging in an affair with a trainer. The fact that I had stayed home with the kids, believing I was doing my duty as a father, made the betrayal sting even deeper. I felt like I had been left alone to hold our family together while she sought comfort in the arms of another. Every lie she'd told, every evasive answer, now crystallized into a painful truth. Determined to confront this head-on, I began a methodical investigation. I started by reviewing her phone records on our shared cloud account. The call logs revealed numerous calls to a number that I later learned belonged to Trevor. I also recalled the distinct cologne scent on that gym towel, an expensive, musky aroma that wasn't mine. I went to the gym unannounced one evening, not to confront anyone directly, but to observe. I stayed in the parking lot for hours, watching the comings and goings of members. I spotted Trevor, a tall, well-built man with a charming smile, interacting with several women. The sight of him triggered a mix of anger and jealousy in me, a storm I couldn't ignore that night. When the house was silent and our daughter was fast asleep, I confronted Jessica. I asked in a low and steady voice, "Jessica, explain this." I laid out the evidence. The text, the call logs, the scent, and even the gym towel. Her face went pale, and for a long moment, she stammered a half-hearted denial. "It's not what you think," she murmured, avoiding my gaze. But I saw the flicker of guilt in her eyes, and every word she spoke only deepened my conviction that I was being deceived. I didn't allow her to finish. With every ounce of hurt and fury pulsing through my veins, I warned her that I would not let this betrayal stand unanswered. I told her that I deserved the truth, that I deserved to know how long this had been going on, and that I would eventually get the answers, one way or another. The conversation ended with her pleading for forgiveness, but her words rang hollow. I felt a profound sense of isolation, as if I were the only one left standing amidst the wreckage of our broken marriage. In the weeks that followed, I dedicated every spare moment to gathering evidence. I began tracking Jessica's whereabouts using discreet methods, recording every time she was absent during her supposed gym sessions. I saved screenshots of texts and emails, each one a building block in the case against her. With every piece of proof, my resolve grew stronger. I wasn't going to be the man who quietly endured betrayal. I was determined to reclaim my dignity, and if that meant delivering a punishment that would leave no doubt, then so be it. That I started training physically as well. Every session at the gym was fueled by a determination to transform my pain into strength. I trained with a brutal intensity, knowing that a day would come when I would have to confront Trevor and anyone else who dared betray me. My fists became instruments of retribution, and the image of my wife's betrayal burned as a constant reminder of the injustice I had suffered that night. As I sat in my study surrounded by files and evidence, I resolved that my next move would be to confront the man who had taken advantage of my wife's stress, Trevor. The idea of meeting him face to face, of forcing him to answer for his role in this affair, was both terrifying and exhilarating. I knew that nothing could restore the trust that had been shattered. Instead, I would reclaim my honor by ensuring that every liar, every thief of my family's peace, would pay a steep price. That MY investigation had now evolved into a full-blown quest for retribution. The more I learned, the deeper the web of betrayal grew. I discovered that Trevor wasn't simply a gym trainer. He was charming, persuasive, and had a knack for making women forget their troubles. Jessica had confided in me, at least in passing, that he was particularly skilled at helping relieve stress. That phrase, once innocent, now took on a dark, ironic meaning. I began to shadow Trevor's routine. Late one afternoon, I followed him discreetly after spotting him leave the gym. He drove a sleek car, the kind that exuded success and a dangerous charm. I trailed him through busy streets and quiet neighborhoods until he pulled into a popular upscale restaurant. My heart pounded as I parked across the street, watching him enter the establishment as if he owned the place. There, through the window, I saw him laughing with a woman whose face I didn't recognize. Someone who looked every bit as confident as he did. Every detail was recorded in my mind. The time, the car, the woman, even the subtle way Trevor's smile hinted at secrets. I knew then that this wasn't a one-off encounter. It was part of a pattern of indulgence and deception. The betrayal cut deeper, knowing that while I stayed home to care for our children, Jessica was out there, finding solace and excitement with another man, determined to bring this hidden life into the light. I began collecting even more evidence. I intercepted phone messages, downloaded call histories, and even confronted acquaintances from the gym under the guise of casual conversation. The responses were vague, but hints of Trevor's charm and Jessica's secret admiration began to surface. Each conversation fueled my resolve to expose the truth, even if it meant entering a world of violence and betrayal from which I might never return home. The tension was unbearable. Jessica's attempts at normalcy only deepened my suspicion. I found her sitting silently at the dining table one night, her eyes distant, as if burdened by secrets too heavy to share. I demanded that she tell me the truth, that she confess everything about her relationship with Trevor. But she only offered broken excuses and tearful denial, her words dissolving into the oppressive silence of our shattered home. In a final burst of determination, I made a plan. I would confront Trevor directly. I would track him down, corner him, and make him face the consequences of his actions. I spent hours planning every detail, studying his habits, and even training in self-defense. I wanted to be ready, physically and mentally, for the confrontation that I knew was inevitable. As the days turned into weeks, my transformation was complete. I had become a man driven by retribution. Every bruise earned in the gym, every harsh word spoken in the dead of night, was a testament to the fact that I was no longer willing to be the victim. I was preparing for a reckoning that would leave a mark on everyone involved in this betrayal. Late one night, as I reviewed the evidence in my study, I made a promise to myself. If Trevor thought he could relieve his stress by breaking my family, he would soon learn that betrayal is met with cold, unyielding vengeance. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of my decision settle in. A decision that would propel me toward a confrontation that promised nothing short of retribution. The night finally arrived when I decided to act. I had tracked Trevor to an exclusive after-hours gym, a place known for its high-end clientele and secretive one-on-one sessions. Under the cover of darkness, I parked my car discreetly outside and waited. Every minute felt like an eternity, every sound amplified by the storm raging outside. I knew that tonight I would confront the man who had dared to steal my wife's trust and my peace of mind inside the gym. The atmosphere was a blend of cold efficiency and luxurious indulgence. I observed from a shadowed corner as Trevor trained with a client, a woman who seemed more like an accessory than a person. His demeanor was calm, almost arrogant, as if he knew the effect he had on people. I could see his eyes briefly flicker when his phone buzzed with a message. I snatched the moment, my anger surging as I decided that there was no room for pleasantries. I approached Trevor as he stepped out onto the gym's terrace. "Trevor," I said in a low, steady voice that brooked no nonsense. He turned, startled, his eyes widening in recognition. "Do I know you?" he asked, his tone laced with feigned politeness. I didn't allow him time to recover. "I'm Michael Carter, the husband of Jessica, and I know everything." His face drained of color as I produced the evidence. Screenshots of text messages, call logs, and even the memory of that gym towel and shirt that had started it all. For a brief moment, there was a standoff. Trevor tried to back away, but I was relentless. "How long?" I demanded. "How long have you been relieving your stress with my wife?" His lips trembled, and he tried to offer a weak explanation, a claim that it was just harmless fun. But every word he uttered only fanned the flames of my fury. I lunged forward, my body moving on instinct honed by weeks of training. Then a brutal fight ensued under the harsh glare of the gym's outdoor lights. Punches flew, and I felt the satisfying crunch of retaliation as I landed blow after blow. The sound of fists colliding with flesh and the grunts of exertion filled the night air. In those moments, the only thing that mattered was retribution. Every strike was a message, every swing a promise that betrayal would never go unpunished. I forced him against the cold metal railing, my eyes locked on his in disbelief and fury. "You ruined everything," I snarled, my voice echoing in the night. As Trevor tried to recover, I pushed him further, ensuring that his screams would be heard as far as the silent, judging stars above. I wasn't out for his life, but for every lie, every stolen moment of trust. When the scuffle finally subsided, Trevor lay battered, his bravado shattered. I stepped back, panting and resolute, knowing that the confrontation was only the beginning. I left him in that dim corner of the gym, his fate sealed as a warning to anyone who dared break the sacred bond of trust. I am the aftermath of that brutal confrontation. The world around me shifted into a haze of vengeance and regret. The physical scars on Trevor's body were a testament to the price of betrayal, but the true wounds lay deep within me. I returned home to find Jessica withdrawn, her once lively eyes now haunted by guilt and fear. Our family, once a haven of love and trust, had become a battlefield of unspoken accusations and raw, unrelenting pain every day. I saw reminders of the night I had taken a stand. The bruises on my knuckles and the grim determination in my eyes told a story that words could not. I had set myself on a path from which there was no return. The evidence of her affair, the stolen moments of weakness, and the physical retribution I had unleashed, all coalesced into a life defined by a singular purpose: to make sure betrayal was met with consequences. In the weeks that followed, I continued to gather evidence, not to further shame her, but to ensure that I understood every facet of the deception. I combed through texts, revisited old photographs, and even spoke with mutual acquaintances who hinted at Jessica's growing closeness to Trevor. Each revelation cut deeper than the last, and with every piece of truth, my desire for retribution only grew stronger. Late one rainy night, as I sat alone in our darkened living room, the weight of my actions pressed heavily upon me. I realized that while I had managed to reclaim some semblance of control through violence, the void of betrayal could never truly be filled. I had become an avenger, a man who no longer sought forgiveness, but demanded punishment. I resolved that if this network of deceit ever tried to resurface, if Jessica or anyone else dared to betray me again, I would be waiting, my fists ready to deliver a final, unyielding reckoning. In those final moments before dawn, as the rain washed away the remnants of a once innocent life, I stepped outside and merged onto the highway. The road ahead was shrouded in darkness, lit only by the distant promise of a new day, a day that would forever bear the scars of what had transpired. I wasn't sure if I could ever reclaim the family I once knew, but one truth remained clear. In a world where betrayal is met with cold, relentless vengeance, I would stop at nothing to ensure that every lie was paid for in blood. As I drove away, the rain mingling with my tears and the night echoing with the ghostly sounds of past confrontations, I knew that my life would never be the same. The path I had chosen was paved with regret, anger, and an unquenchable thirst for retribution. And though I was now an avenger, a man defined by his scars, I silently vowed that the price of betrayal would always be collected in full. The days after that fateful confrontation blurred together as I tried to navigate the wreckage of what once was my life. Every morning, I awoke to a heavy silence at home, a silence that spoke of broken promises and a shattered family. Jessica's eyes no longer held the warmth they once did. They were hollow, haunted by secrets she refused to share. And though I had made Trevor pay for his part in the betrayal, I knew deep down that nothing could bring back the trust that had been so violently torn apart that I spent long hours alone in the study, sifting through the evidence I'd meticulously collected. The digital files, the photos from that night at the gym, and the haunting images of Jessica's tear-streaked face kept replaying in my mind. Each time I looked at them, the anger and sorrow rose up anew, mingling into an almost palpable despair. I had become an avenger, a man defined by his scars, and every blow I delivered to those who crossed me came at a cost that I was still beginning to understand. But as weeks turned into a month, I felt the relentless grip of vengeance begin to morph into something more ominous. I found myself increasingly restless. My nightly drives became an escape, a desperate attempt to outrun the ghosts of my past. The rain-slicked highways offered no solace, only a reminder of the blood and sweat that had marked my transformation. In the dead of night, every headlight and passing shadow seemed to whisper the names of those who betrayed me. One particularly cold evening, I sat in a rundown diner on the edge of town. The clink of silverware and low murmur of other patrons barely penetrated the isolation I felt. I stared blankly at the menu, my mind not on the food, but on the next step in my journey. I had been tracking the network of deception that had ensnared Jessica for weeks now. It wasn't just Trevor. There were others involved, shadowy figures whose names I had only begun to decipher. Among those names was Carter, a moniker that reeked of betrayal and had surfaced in encrypted texts. That name would be my next target before long. I received a cryptic message on my phone. No name, just a time and a location. An abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Atlanta. It was an invitation, a challenge thrown into the void, daring me to delve deeper into this dark underworld. The message promised answers, but I knew better than to trust anyone in a world built on lies. Still, my need for closure and a final reckoning drove me to accept the meeting. The night I arrived at the warehouse, the air was heavy with anticipation. I parked my car in a narrow, shadowed alley, the hum of the city distant and muted. My heart pounded in rhythm with my resolve. I approached the entrance cautiously, every sense on high alert. Inside, the space was cavernous, illuminated only by flickering overhead lights and the faint glow of street lamps filtering through broken windows. The air smelled of damp concrete and long-forgotten secrets. I am the center of the vast, empty space. A single figure waited. It was hard to make out his features at first, but as I stepped closer, I recognized the lean, calculating gaze of a man who had seen more than his fair share of darkness. "Michael Carter?" the man said, his voice low and even. I nodded, barely able to steady my trembling hand. "I know you're here for answers," he continued. "I have the information you seek, but know this. The truth may cost you more than you're willing to pay." I clenched my fists, anger and determination surging within me. "I'm done paying for lies," I replied, my voice resolute. "I want to know every detail, every secret that led to my family's ruin." The man leaned forward, revealing a scar that marred his otherwise calm demeanor. "Your wife was just the beginning," he said cryptically. "There's a network of deceit, a circle of individuals who thrive on broken trust and stolen lives. Trevor was merely one link, and Jessica, she was willingly drawn into this web. The man you've been hearing whispers about, Carter, is the one who orchestrated much of it. He operates behind the scenes, ensuring that every betrayal is met with the right kind of chaos." Every word was like a blow to my already battered soul. I demanded, "Where is he? How do I stop him?" The stranger's eyes darkened, You can't stop what's already in motion, he said, but you can ensure that every lie is paid for. You must be willing to go deeper, to let vengeance be your guide, even if it consumes you entirely. His words echoed through the empty warehouse, a grim promise of the road ahead. In that moment, I realized that my journey had evolved beyond the confines of my personal betrayal. I was now entangled in a far-reaching conspiracy of deceit, one that threatened to tear apart the very fabric of trust in the city. My heart, already scarred by treachery, hardened into a resolve that bordered on obsession. I nodded slowly, accepting that there was no turning back. The path of retribution had claimed me, and if I was to confront Carter and dismantle this dark network, I would have to sacrifice everything I once held dear. I left the warehouse that night with the stranger's words echoing in my mind. The cold air did little to ease the burning anger within me. I drove through the empty streets, each mile a grim reminder of the sacrifices I'd made and the battles yet to come. The truth was out there, hidden beneath layers of lies, and I was determined to extract it. No matter how deep I had to dig, the highway stretched out before me, dark and unyielding, much like the road I now traveled. A road paved with the shattered remnants of trust and the unrelenting demand for vengeance. And as I merged onto the freeway, my eyes fixed on the horizon, I silently vowed that I would continue this pursuit until every secret was exposed, and every traitor made to suffer the ultimate price.